Hello again, everyone. Back with a comparison video between the Google 9 Pro XL and the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. Now, when the Google 9 Pro XL came out, I used this as my daily driver for about 4 months. And then I switched to the smaller Pro for a couple of months. And when the S25 Ultra came out, I've also used that pretty much since then, since it's been out. So it's been about 6-7 months. I've alternated a little bit, obviously, and I do use more than one line, so that's why I have a sort of family phone and I have a work phone. So they've both been dailied extensively. Right now, you can get these on sale at Best Buy, the S25 Ultra, for $9.99. That's as cheap as I've seen it, and this is in the US. I know that prices are different in different places. I've seen the Google 9 Pro XL as low as $7.99, and if through a carrier, like for example, Spectrum has had it consistently for $5.99, and if you throw in any junk trade-in that is on their list, you can get an extra $100 off. So that brings it down to $4.99. Now I've seen it on sale outright with no trade-in for $7.99. Again, the best price I've seen on this one is $9.99, which is roughly the same $200 difference as if you were to buy them retail. Retail in the US, this is $1,100, this is $1,300, $10.99, $12.99. Now, the question is, do you get an extra $200 in terms of going with the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra? Is it worth it? Well, that kind of depends. If you use the S Pen, and then we can end the conversation right now. If the S Pen is something that you rely on, or you really enjoy using, or it's integrated in your productivity or your daily life, then by all means, the conversation's over. Wait until this is on sale. You can get some great trade-in offers as well, various carriers. Go with the S25 Ultra. As we know, the prices are high, but both of these phones, these companies, Google and Samsung, offer really good trade-ins. Well, not really so much trade-ins, but trade-ins through the carrier. When these launch, you can get really good trade-ins if you have old iPhones. Samsung obviously has good trade-ins through their website. Maybe not quite as good as they used to be, but they're pretty solid nonetheless. Now, as far as, the overall, kind of piece by piece, kind of breakdown, I'll say that they're both beautiful phones. You really can't go wrong either way. So whatever fits in your budget and whatever you prioritize. If you prioritize photos, then I would say go with the 9 Pro XL. If you really prefer video, for example, then I might go with the S25 Ultra. If you need a heavy productivity device and you're invested in, say, the Microsoft Office suite, there's good integration here with the S25 Ultra. If you're invested heavily in Google Docs and you don't need the S Pen, then Google Pixel 9 Pro XL would be the way to go. So again, we're going to do that a little bit throughout the video, kind of go back and forth, right? Let's see if I can, let's not do that. We'll go ahead and put them down for now because I'm way too clumsy to pop them up on the video all the time, every time I talk about them. So in terms of build quality, we'll start there. They're both great. I prefer the build quality of the Samsung S25 Ultra. I feel like it is a little bit titanium outside, frame. It has a little, the Victus, whatever it's called, Gorilla Armor 2 glass, Victus 2 on the back. Just the feel of it, this is silly, but tapping on it, this feels a little more hollow. I know some people have had issues with the camera coming off on the back. I think it's an overblown issue, as most things are on the internet, but I could see where it could be an issue if this is just kind of clamped on with a couple of clips. I haven't had that issue, obviously, but I know some people have. This is not the titanium kind of frame or build, so it's maybe not quite as premium as the S25 Ultra, but to be honest, they're both great. I wouldn't worry about that either way. But I do feel like the Samsung is a little more premium, kind of keeping up with sort of the Apple build quality and what have you. So there's that. As far as the display, they're both outstanding, right? I don't see any issues with the display whatsoever. I'll go ahead and turn up the brightness on this all the way to max. It's a beautiful display. S25 Ultra, same thing. I'll turn it up to max brightness. I mean, it's just, they're both outstanding, right? So I'm not, I don't have a preference either way in terms of display. They just both look great. Maybe Samsung has a little bit of an edge for some people. Maybe Google has a little bit, the Pixel 9 Pro XL has a little bit of an edge for some people. It really just depends on it doesn't really depend on anything. They're both great. I wouldn't worry about that as being a determining factor in terms of your decision. I will say though, in terms of build and feel in the hand, this phone feels a little bit, they're both about the same height, but for some reason, this feels a little bit thinner, and the cases, they're more thin cases for the S25 Ultra, but they're roughly the same height. Maybe the S25 Ultra is slightly taller, maybe. It's hard to tell. In terms of width, you can give it a little slight nod to the S25 Ultra, but they're really hard to kind of tell. You see it's more rounded here, more of a square kind of round, if you will, and this is more rounded. I prefer the one thing I will say about the display and the build in terms of feel in the hand, I feel like the S25 Ultra is a little bit lighter, but I think that, it's not by much. I think the case selection is better for the S25 Ultra, and there are a lot of good alternatives for thin cases that make this a light phone. There are some for Google as well, but it's really very few. I think that they're both equal. It kind of just depends on if you prefer a more square look to your videos, or I say a rectangular look to your videos. As you can see there, it's cut off a little bit. To me, for some odd reason, the S25 Ultra feels better. It just feels better in my hand. I feel like the Google, it's relatively, I'm not going to say it's small, it's an XL, but it doesn't have that same kind of I guess with the square edges here with the Ultra, you just get that fuller video experience when you're watching videos. But again, the display itself is not really the issue. I think it's more kind of the feel in the hand and what have you. You want to get into technicalities, the peak brightness with the Pixel XL, I guess, is higher. But again, I don't really see that being much of a difference. Where I do see a difference is performance. So with gaming, for example, the S25 Ultra, it never lags on anything that I do. It doesn't stutter. It doesn't have any issues. Now, I'm not saying that the Pixel 9 Pro XL does necessarily, but there are occasions where it'll kind of just stutter a little bit, or it'll lag out a little bit when playing a game, or even just in use. It'll kind of just delay for a moment, and I don't find that ever happening with the S25 Ultra. If you do a lot of gaming, maybe video rendering on your phone, like editing and what have you, you're going to get better performance out of the S25 Ultra with the Snapdragon chip. It's just what it is. I don't see it being really a conversation, to be honest with you. Now, on the flip side, there's more RAM in the Pixel, which I don't know why Samsung doesn't go to 16 gigabytes of RAM as standard. They really should. That would just kind of put them way over the top. So I think the Pixel makes up for some of the performance with the extra RAM, but I'm not really sure that it necessarily makes such a big difference where it's going to outperform the S25 Ultra. It just doesn't. I will say too that the Pixel tends to get a little bit warmer if I'm doing longer video recording as well. So I have noticed that. I don't know if that's something across the board or if that's just my experience, but I do notice that there's a little bit more, warmth on the Pixel side. Even when downloading things, sometimes it takes a little bit longer on the Pixel side than it does with the S25 Ultra. Now, again, I mentioned cameras already. The S25 Ultra, I will say, okay, so a couple things. The Pixel, in my opinion, is the best camera on any smartphone, period. With the, the processing, post-processing after the picture, what have you, all of that makes the pictures just come out outstanding. But the S25 Ultra is close. I do think the S25 Ultra gives you better video quality. It doesn't, it has an easier time with motion than the Pixel does. I feel like sometimes the Pixel, when I'm doing video and I'm moving around, it kind of it's very robotic in a way, and it kind of just moves unnaturally. And now neither of these are to the point. Neither of these can compete with the iPhone with respect to video quality in terms of smoothness, especially when you're moving around and you have moving subjects. That's just not happening. But the Ultra comes closer to the iPhone than the Pixel does for video. For, again, photos, the Pixel 9 Pro XL is the best across the board of any device that I have. So if photos are your thing, the editing, all of the fun stuff with AI, that's another thing. Now, getting to AI, I think that they're both actually really good. I use Gemini on both. There's a lot more fun stuff to do with Galaxy, with the Samsung, in terms of, I mean, I won't say there's more fun stuff, but it just seems to be well integrated into the phone. They both blow Apple away. I don't know what they're doing with AI. I don't think they're doing anything with it, frankly. But I love Gemini. It's outstanding for virtually everything that I use it for, creating images, doing research, making sure my students aren't cheating on their essays, all of that stuff. It's really, really good. Battery life, that's another area. I think that the battery life is slightly better on the S25 Ultra, but it's not bad on the Pixel. Both of these are going to get you through the day, no problem. I will say that I feel like with Android 16, there's more efficiency. It's improved the Pixel experience across the board. And that includes even the original Pixel Fold that I have. Everything is improved with the new Android update. So, Google's going to be on top of that, right? So in terms of software updates, you're going to get them first here, obviously, because they're the ones handling that. You're going to get them relatively quickly here compared to before. But, that's also part of Samsung's selling ploy, is like, here's my new phone. It now has the latest operating system. It's on par with Google for 5 minutes, and then Google will put something else out, and then there you go. So there's that. But battery, it's pretty much, they have roughly the same size battery. Google, the Pixel has a slightly bigger battery, but I don't find them to be necessarily a big difference. But I will say the S25 Ultra is a little bit better, maybe like 45 minutes more in my experience per day. So there's that. The charging speed, I know people are into charging speed. I don't use wireless charging. I very rarely use it. They both charge pretty quickly, but the S25 Ultra charges slightly faster compared to, obviously, the Chinese offerings. They don't compare, right? They're not doing it in 30 minutes. Your whole phone is charged. That's not happening. Obviously, we know the issues Samsung has had in the past with the Note 7 and Google. American company phones, they just don't have the same charging fast speed technology stuff that's happening. I already spoke about the AI, so I think I'll leave that alone. But, I use Gemini on both. I kind of stick to the Google stuff, but the S25 Ultra has a lot of stuff to play with, so that's kind of fun. And with the S Pen, it makes it even better, right? So again, if the S Pen is the choice, then is the deal that you need that, then the conversation's over at that point. Now, I will say that this is, again, gone down to $9.99 in the US. That's the cheapest I've seen it. Maybe $8.99 if you have a carrier you're going to attach it to through Best Buy. Right now, the 256 is literally on sale right now when I'm making this video for $9.99. You can get an open box for like somewhere in the eights. This I've seen as low as $7.99 brand new. That, it's an unbeatable value, okay? It's the same price as a base model iPhone 16, and this blows that phone away. So in terms of a pro level, Google's done something smart. They've kind of chilled out in the processor. It's not as fast, but they use their software, their post-processing with the photos. They're relying on what their strengths are in order to make their product kind of seem as premium as possible. And it's still a premium device, but it's not the Snapdragon chip. So, just something to keep in mind. But you can get generally better deals on this, but you also will get better trade-in values on the Samsung, right? So where your investment and where you put your money, and really it comes down to how you feel about the software. I love, the Samsung software. I mean, One UI is just, I like them both, but with the little extras, it's not as redundant as it used to be with it does have, apps that are repetitive, the calendar and what have you. I wish they'd get rid of it. But for those people who are invested in the Samsung ecosystem, maybe they keep it for them as well. I don't know if it's necessary, but that's what they do. So it's fine. It's not like it used to be back in the day when there was just way too much bloat. They've really minimized it. You can delete a lot of the Samsung apps now, whereas before you couldn't. So I'm not worried about it. With the little extras and plus the S Pen, this has been, again, my main device for the most part. So I'm kind of giving you what my choice would be, but that's because of what I do, right? If you're into photography, then there's that. There is one thing I'd like to say about the photos as well. As a person of color, I left my watch off just so you can see the difference in my skin tone, right? So this is what it looks like without, any exposure to the sun. And then this is my skin tone, generally speaking, right? Like, when I'm out and about. So the Pixel has been really great about skin tone accuracy, especially with people of color who have darker skin. And that's why I've kind of navigated towards it for photos. But the S25 Ultra has really improved. And I don't feel like I turn into Casper, the friendly Mexican ghost anymore with this phone. Like, it's been really good in terms of just kind of more accurate skin tones. It's not quite there yet. I still feel like I'm a little lighter than I actually am in some of these photos, but it's not egregious like it used to be, where they had quote unquote beauty mode and it was like skin lightening mode. And I found that very, inaccurate. And now it's not like that at all. They've done a really good job. And I think Kevin, the Tech Ninja, actually mentioned that in one of his videos as well, if I'm not mistaken. And I totally concur with that opinion. So there's that. So I guess that's pretty much it. If it comes down to the price, $200 difference, I'm not gonna without the S Pen, I'm not gonna tell you you're gonna get a better deal with the S25 Ultra. You'll get a better deal out of pocket with the Pixel, at least in the US, with all the sales and the various opportunities to trade in and what have you. Depends on who you're going with, but we'll just use Best Buy as an example. I've seen this again, $799. I mean, that is like a bargain on top of a bargain. It's like an outstanding value compared to what else is out on the market. For $1,000, unless you can get a really good trade-in, you can make this a lot cheaper, maybe even cheaper than this, depending upon, what the circumstances are. Like when I first traded this in, I actually traded in a 128 gig that I got on a trade-in with an iPhone that was old, and I got it for like half off and when it was on sale. And then I just flipped that to this and I got like $1,000 off of my carrier plus this only was like literally $80 extra. So in that situation, that was the better play. But if you're coming out of pocket and you don't need the S Pen, this is the better play. Unless you do a lot of heavy gaming and you need the S Pen, okay? If you prefer photos, then this is the better play. But if you prefer video, then I would go here with the S25 Ultra. So again, it depends on your needs. If you are invested in the Microsoft Office suite as somebody who's does office work or kind of professional work that requires that, then I would go with the S25 Ultra. If you need people to sign documents, S25 Ultra. If you're invested heavily in the Google suite, then obviously the Pixel is gonna work as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I think I'm not gonna tell you what to choose. You obviously have to decide for yourself, but I can offer what I value in both and where I see the strengths and weaknesses. Is this worth $200 more, as I mentioned earlier? No, unless it's about the S Pen and the things that you need it for. This is one of the best values in all phones on the market, period. It just is. So there's that. Okay, well, that's all I got. I hope you're well. I hope your family's well, and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.